Hello and welcome to our webinar on how to handle an approach from a buyer. I'm Sophie Lewis, Marketing Executive at Equiteq, and our presenter for today is Bruce Ramsay, Investment Director based in our London office. Bruce will be presenting for about 20 minutes and then I'll be putting your questions to him. Please post your questions using the control panel on the right-hand side of the screen. The questions box appears towards the bottom. So over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Sophie. Good afternoon to everybody, or very good early morning from the Far East. My name is Bruce Ramsay. I've been at Equiteq 6 or 7 years, and I lead many of the transactions that we run through the UK and European office. And prior to getting involved in this, I was part of a consulting business that we grew and sold over a 15-year period. So both experience having been through the process many of you are going through, as well as getting to an eventful outcome. So what I want to talk to do is what we call a bid defense. An interested buyer connects with you and says, do you want to have a conversation? They don't normally say, can I buy you? It'll be some very open-winded question about maybe meeting and having discussion about collaboration, etc. And the question is, how should you handle those, and how best to maximize the value you get from that incoming inquiry? First point to make is, it's actually quite likely, if or when you get to the point you have actually sold your business, that it will have been as a result of a process stimulated by an interesting buyer approaching your company. I did a quick cursory review of the deals we've done over the last 18 months in the UK and in Europe and USA, and probably about a third of them started as a result of an incoming inquiry, whereas 2/3 were a result of us with a proactive process reaching out to the buyer community. Now, just because we call it bid defense, it doesn't necessarily mean it's only one incoming inquiry. It could be a multiple, more than one, and it may result in a short process and going out to a number of other buyers to provide some competition. But nevertheless, it's a good chance that that is how a deal will have come about. So it is certainly on that basis worth taking it of interest. And we do also know, looking at deal announcements and materials, that very often companies acquire other companies with whom they've worked with over a period of time. So it's a good source of deals. However, just because an incoming inquiry is the stimulant often for a deal to be done, that doesn't mean that actually a deal will be done. If we're to turn over and look at it from the buyer's perspective, and this is data out of one particular buyer, but I think a very similar profile for many particular players exists. Starting on the right hand, to actually for them to close a deal, they've probably signed a letter of intent or heads of terms with more than one, because there's probably a 10% fallout between signing that letter. In fact, for every offer they make, they only sign one LOI. So they've got to make 2 offers to get to one closed deal. They've probably signed an NDA in order to exchange information and get quite close with 10 companies to get to that point. So of those they sign an NDA with, only 10% go through to sale. And there's probably 20 or 30 more companies they've reached out to and had an initial conversation, whether it's them contacting you as the potential seller or whether it's you as a seller reaching out to them, 20 or 30 so. So you have an incoming inquiry. The chance of it actually closing is, on average, relatively low. But we do know the deals come from this, so what can you do to maximize the opportunity from this interested inquiry? So, key points. This is not going to be a full précis on exactly how to complete a deal, but just picking up this buyer approach issue. First thing is, make sure you understand the realistic value of your business as a basis for evaluating any offer that may evolve. If your business is worth on all pragmatic reasons, say 10 million at this point in time, but you have a desire to get to 20 million, know that before you start getting into the conversation, because it's unlikely that you're going to get to 20 million if the underlying value is 10, the way you want to be. That's not to say you can't get there, but at least you're starting with a basis of fact. You could do some cursory valuation, you can compare some multiples, but that's often very naive and probably incorrect. Here in Equiteq, we have a valuation methodology that we take our clients through, which does a probability range of current values of the business as displayed on the left-hand side, showing what you can almost certainly get 95% through to the higher scores of the chance of getting 10 to 15% of a much higher value, as well as actually working out the chance of you doing a deal based on the parameters in your business, its desirability in the eyes of a potential buyer. So this is a really important first stake in the ground. Some in the negotiation game refer to this as BATNA, having your best alternative to this negotiated agreement. In this particular example, we're looking at a business worth between 12 and 14 million. If your offer comes in 9, there's a good reason why you might be able to, it's less than what you're worth. If you get an offer from 18 million, then it's more than you're worth, and it's certainly worth pursuing. So step one, make sure you know what your value is and what game you can potentially play. Second key point is do not disclose too much information too early. The adage here is you only have one chance to make a good first impression. And nothing is so disillusioning to us in this game as people contacting us and asking if they can help and say, by the way, I've just sent all my management accounts to this potential buyer. That doesn't matter, does it? Yes, it does matter. It's really important that you control the flow and the disclosure of information that presents you in the best possible light. And if you hand your potential buyer raw information, they immediately get the opportunity to interpret that how they want to interpret it, and you've lost that opportunity to do so. You might have an NDA, but you're disclosing things you don't want to disclose. So no sending of management accounts. Yes, they might be able to get your public accounts depending on where you operate and the size of your business. Then the high-level public data is available, but any other information should be presented with you in control. So no sending off information early on in the process. Next point is ensure your initial data share presents the business in the best possible light. This is an example from a company that had actually just done that, sent their management accounts to clients showing an EBITDA of under $1 million. It was very easy with some basic analysis to present actually a 3 million opportunity, 3 times the level of profit. And the reason that's important is it completely changes the nature and the scale of the game. You're now talking about a 3 million profit business or a 1 million profit business. And whether the buyer is looking at basic EBITDA multiple or whatever, you're suddenly positioning yourself in a completely different field of play. Now, some of these adjustments and synergies will be able to debate, but you need to present the bigger numbers, not the smaller numbers, right from the word go in order to influence the future discussions. Next point is, as you share data, focus on the attributes that you have that would be valuable to the acquirer. Think about why is that incoming acquirer actually interested in your business, and it will not be, or it's highly unlikely to be, as a result of anything to do with your P&L. There will be certain things that you are doing, or skills you've got, or clients you've got that they want to bring into their business, or the management team. Work out what those are, and that shouldn't be too difficult with some lateral thought, and then present your data to them that are picking them up. So this is just a few examples looking at things like the rate at which new clients are being won, or top right there, looking at long-term client relationships, how these have evolved over time and the revenue you've got. Or further down, it's looking at the pool of skills within the organization for a particular skill, demonstrating that your business has more of these skills that they've been trying to acquire than any other player in the market. These are the important things. These are what you want to highlight, and these are what you want to present, not just raw management accounting numbers in the control of information. So it's always turning things around and looking at it from the perspective of the buyer and supporting the reasons why they'd want to acquire it. Next thing is data with the buyer's eyesight on is think about what you might be worth to the buyer and help them quantify it. It's all very well talking about synergy this and synergy that with a buyer. Why not go through and do the calculation to make it easy for them to understand? So, for example, in this particular example, we're looking at revenue and profitability, both as a standalone business, but also what could be achieved with synergies with this particular buyer. And again, this isn't about saying, oh, I'll grow at 10% or 20%. It's saying, if I'm with you, I will save this cost, and you can put a hypothesis of what it will be. I will sell to X more customers at Y% revenue, at Z% at Y revenue, Z% gross profit, and put together a series of scenarios as to what could be achieved, and lay those on the table as a future opportunity. Now, as you start getting into discussions, you may be talking, and they may say it won't be actually that number of customers, it'll be this number of customers, or we'll have a different success rate. And then you're just varying the parameters, but you're presenting it in a format that makes it much, much easier for them to then go through the financial justification for having a serious offer for your business. So just make it easy for them. Your information, you can have the first draft. I'm about to say guess. It's not guess, it's a first punt as to what those values, what the future performance could be as a result of the two businesses coming together. And in that quantification of future value, it comes on to the next point, which is always a very interesting one, which is considering making the initial price suggestion. Some people talk about anchoring, and it's not possible to say exactly what the ideal thing is here, but the normal process is to get a buyer to make an offer and explain what that offer is, the base on which they've calculated. At times, it can be a good idea for you to say to the buyer what it is you think the business is worth to them. And the advantage of doing that is it can position you at a much higher value. Referring back to the negotiation theorists, it's all about ZOPA, the zone of possible agreement. If your business may be only worth 10, but there's a reason why it's 20, by launching into 20, you've immediately moved the field of play over in your direction. But as you do that and present this, this suggested valuation, you have to ensure it is based on some facts. You can't do this if you're a weak business. If you're struggling with revenue growth and poor profitability, whatever adjustments you get, you're probably better off waiting for them to come to an offer with an explanation and then renegotiating. But if you do have strong growth, and particularly strong synergistic growth, then this can be a very good way to position yourself in a higher place. But you've got to be able to justify on some kind of multiples or DCF or synergy as to why that number is being created, rather than just saying, I've got some software in my business, so I'm worth 6 times revenue. That won't get you there. But certainly if you can quantify it, then do that and position yourself at a higher level of play. Next key point is understand deal structures that are possible and only progress into an exclusive due diligence with an LOI, letter of intent, or some people call those heads of terms, with all the commercials clearly detailed. For those who are not familiar, in this sort of scale of business that we're talking to today, it is likely that you will only go and do detailed due diligence with one buyer, and it's quite likely, hopefully, that that will close off as a transaction as a result, provided no major problems arise during that process. But the moment you sign that LOI and go exclusive, your ability to negotiate is greatly reduced because you can't play in another buyer because you've told all the other buyers, if there were other buyers, to go away, or you're restricted from talking to people for a number of months. But when you go into that, do not go into that that exclusive period based on an agreement that just talks about some kind of value. Make sure that all the key commercial elements are explained in as much detail as they can be without having the due diligence, and that also you've disclosed relevant information that you know is like it. So if you've said, I'm going to be making 2 million profit this year during negotiations, and you're going to go exclusive, and you know damn well that actually you're only going to make 1.3 or 4, you're much better off disclosing that now than letting that be discovered in DD and having the price completely pulled away from under you. And so the sort of things you need to be considering and to be covered in this document wherever possible are obviously whether it's cash or shares, and then there's all sorts of issues about when the shares vest, maybe putting call options on later transactions. A lot of buyers try and roll back on this as they work their way into the document. I need to raise these and clarify them right on the day on day one in the LOI. The big one is the earn-out. It's, well, not always, but certainly 80% of the time there will be some kind of earn-out associated with the payment for your business. And the issues that need to be addressed include, first of all, what the earn-out is based on. What's the metric? It's actually quite possible to not have anything to do with the P&L. It doesn't have to be on profit. It could be on other metrics that are the reasons for why the acquirer is buying you, whether it's recruitment of staff or acquisition of new customers or people staying. But if it is on the P&L, the key rules are try and make it as far up the P&L as possible. EBITDA is a far too leveraged metric. It's better to be at the gross profit level or even the revenue level where you've got there's less room for debate about what that particular number is. Think hard about the target and the start point. What level of performance do you have to, will you start getting earn-out? We don't want to be at the point where you've got to exceed your plan or exceed last year before you get anything. You want a low start point and ideally a low target as well. But start with a target to get them excited and then try and engineer down that start point to de-risk it from your point. Think about costs and revenues that will be included and excluded, and how much control you will have over the business if you're being asked to perform. Things about cross-charging can be a big issue. So get these bottomed out in the LOI. The cash and debt adjustments. Hopefully you'll have excess cash and you'll be taking that out of the business. You'll be acknowledging the fact that you can't leave a load of debts on the company as you walk away. So while those can't be clearly quantified, careful wording of the LOI can ensure that the framework is created from which a calculation can be made that will suit you rather than the buyer. Employment agreements, particularly on things like, and you start getting into non-competing clauses, get these bottomed out early on, at least as a framework of the likely salary structures and the non-compete. Think about tax liabilities. Make sure these are well clarified in terms of what you're having to leave behind, and particularly in many jurisdictions, who gets the benefit of tax credits as a result of the transaction, share option release, etc., and making sure those are fully credited to you as a seller and don't fall into the hands of the buyer having not been picked up. And also make sure you're clearly stating, as referred to earlier, what the current projected performance is, the basis on which the offer is made, so that we're not then having to go back and renegotiate because performance was not on it. So get all these bottomed out as you go into that LOI process, LOI signing, and before diving down the due diligence process. And finally, don't try and go on this process alone. Most of you will probably only sell your business once. We do have people who've done it multiple times, but generally it's only once. And so make sure you are guided on the journey. I mentioned before, slightly discerning when people say, I've sent my management accounts off to the buyer, can you now help me? It's not a great place to start. We'd like to start earlier. A transaction we did a while back, similar to that, although the client who we knew we'd worked with before said, I've already signed the LOI, could you just help me just close it out? It wasn't an easy process. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of crawling back, because so many of these rules had been broken. And even the buyer said to us, if you'd been involved from the beginning, this deal would have happened much more easily and much more quickly. So having someone to guide you on the route is a benefit not just to you, but also to the buyer. Not all buyers see it as conflict and someone pushing up the price. They see having someone along for the journey as a guide to the seller in what is normal and acceptable, and helping smooth over the bumps in the road to get to the point where a transaction can be done. So those are the key points to think about when the phone rings and they come in. They are: make sure you understand what you're worth, put that stake in the ground. Don't disclose too much information early on. When you do start presenting information, make sure you're presenting the business in the best possible light. Make sure you're focusing on the attributes that the acquirer believes are valuable, and focus on what you are worth to the buyer. If you are going well and you're bullish, consider making an initial punt at what the price might be, but make sure when you do that, you can justify and back it up with some form of computation. Understand the deal structures that are possible as you start negotiating those prior to going into due diligence, and don't go on the process alone. It may well be the first time you've done it, it may be the only time, and it will be unwise to go into uncharted waters. So that's the key points I want to cover very shortly and simply. So Sophie, I don't know if you've pulled any questions as we've gone through that we can answer.
Yep, so thanks to those who have sent in your questions. We're now going to try and answer as many as possible. The first one is, will my business be worth more if I'm approached by a buyer than if I go out to market?
Good question. It could be. It is an incoming inquiry is immediately an indication of positive interest, and if you manage the process, and whether it's just direct description of value and from the guy who you know wants to acquire a business, and or you use it to launch a mini process and create competition, then yes, it definitely can be a good way to get premium price, and we have often done that with clients. I would just add for Visa, a lot of incoming inquiries can often be tire kickers who are looking to just basically bring staff in and just take on novate contracts and bring staff on board and try everything they can to avoid paying for the actual business. So yes, it can be, but find out early on whether the opportunity exists or actually it's just a recruitment exercise, in which case it needs to be dropped.
Okay, thanks for that. The next question is, in knowing what my value is roughly, is it not just 1 times revenue?
On average, it probably is 1 times revenue, but that is only an average, and there are quite a wide distribution of consulting businesses around that. I think the data shows that the average varies by sector. It is around 1, but a quarter of businesses are worth more than 1.5, and quite a few are worth less than 0.5. So you won't be at 1, you'll be at one side or the other, and where you sit depends on your trajectory, your profitability, and your desirability. So if you sit at 1, you'll be either naively hopeful or naively underselling yourself, and I'd be very wary about using that simplistic approach trying to understand value.
Okay, I think probably time for one final question. What is the main reason for a deal failing?
A deal failing, not going through to completion. Some happen in due diligence, but that is rare, provided no one has been mucking about and presenting incorrect information or not fully disclosing at appropriate times. In this particular context of buyer approach and their response is losing momentum and the lack of competitive tension. So, there is a phrase some people use in the M&A community, says one buyer, no buyer. If you've only got one buyer, you can't create competitive tension both to drive it through to fruition and also get a good value. Now that isn't entirely true, and as I said, we've often done one-to-one very good transactions, but you have to work very hard to maintain that momentum, and that is the problem. Project we might start soon, someone's been dancing around with someone for 18 months now, and it's just gone nowhere, and they've had enough. But so, because there's no reason, there's no motivation, there's no external advisor, no one making it happen. So the lack of momentum is the killer of deals in this one-to-one situation.
Thanks for that, Bruce. So that's all we have time for today's Q&A session. If you posed a question which we didn't have time to answer, we'll get back to you on a one-to-one basis after the event. If you'd like to discuss anything else around the webinar or any aspect of your plans to sell, please do contact me at sophie.lewis@equiteq.com. I'd also like to add, if you aren't already a member, then please do join our Equiteq Edge Club. It's a free source of information for consulting firm owners looking to realise equity value in their businesses. We update it regularly with expert guidance, unique research, guest articles, and lots more, including a monthly newsletter. Just want to say thank you to Bruce for a very insightful webinar, and thanks to everyone who made it today. We'll be uploading a recording of this webinar tomorrow and also sending you a link to it. Finally, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, Bruce.
Thank you, Sophie.